Helen, it is great to have you here.
Well, thank you. It is great to be here.
Well, I'm in awe. I just got back from Artificiality Summit. Had to have you on the podcast. You do phenomenal work, really captivated by everything that you're doing. So let's just get stuck in and ask all of the very big questions. So, you are a research institute, and the extraordinary, and I mean extraordinary ideas, which I haven't heard anybody else talk about. And I read a lot, which is that you've got these three ideas, which is the 8 roles we give AI, your model of cognitive sovereignty, and there's this concept which I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Symbiogenesis. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, where humans and AI evolve together. So I'm just going to give you the mic and just tell us about these concepts.
Well, first, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me on your podcast, and also that you used a word up front, which is awe. And awe and wonder is kind of very grounding for us because
Mm.
people with AI are often very fearful, and there's a reason for that. Can be really confused, and there's a reason for that, and we'll come back to all of those things.
Mm.
But awe and wonder is so important because awe is the bit that breaks your brain, and wonder is the bit where you put it back together again. And that's what we try and do with all of our communication, with our summit and our thesis and what have you. So coming back to your sort of early question, the way that we think about this in very simple terms is a couple of different frames. The first one, that's the most foundational, is that um, there's ideas that are emerging in science and across all sorts of platforms as we build AI, where we realize that life and intelligence have the same base. We come from the same stuff, and we call that computation, which in some ways is we think of computers, but what it really is about processing information to make decisions and take actions. And all intelligence does that. And so we're kind of made of the same stuff at this conceptual level. And symbiogenesis, which is it's like a wonderful word. What does it mean? It
Mm.
sounds pretty complex. It sounds a little bit like Genesis. It sounds a little bit like symbiosis, which people understand to mean, living together in a mutual sort of reinforcing position. But symbiogenesis is like another step altogether. Symbiogenesis is growing together, doing something completely different emerges. And the example that is the canonical example of symbiogenesis is however many billions of years ago, a one bacteria swallowed another bacteria, one cell swallowed another, and they became kind of friends. Right? And then that's called the cells we're made up of. The mitochondria in our cells were originally bacteria. Now, this has only been known for, I don't know, 50 years or something, but it's a stunning discovery. It's an incredible discovery, and we owe a lot to the woman who discovered it. And what's happening now with AI is kind of that. And that leads us to what we call our symbiosis or adaptation, depending on the audience, cube, but we just call it the cube, which is 8 different roles that we put AI into when we use it. Because it's a cognitive technology, it's a social, cultural technology. And so it's not as much about what people do with AI. Here I am, I'm translating a document from one thing to another. I'm creating a little image. I'm doing some coding. I have an agent going off doing things for me. That's kind of how most people talk about AI. But what really matters is what's the role you put AI into? Are you trying to get AI to be a doer for you, to go away and do things? Or are you trying to get AI to be a catalyst for you, to spark lots of ideas and expand your space of possibility? Or are you getting AI to be much deeper entwined with who you are. You trying to outsource things so that you don't even have to have any judgment or entanglement with the decision at all and just get the AI to do it? Or are you trying to go up to sort of quite a high level of use of AI where you're co-authoring with it? You don't even know or care where ideas come from. You're going through vast new spaces of becoming. You're becoming an entirely different person. And at the end of that, you have become an entirely different person. Your identity has fundamentally changed. So these all come down to, in our research, which is story-based, ethnographic, high-touch, deep involvement with people's experiences with AI. Since, well, we've been doing this a decade, but over the last 3 years since ChatGPT came out is really where things became far more interesting, because lots of reasons. Language is a very different, special thing. And so we work with people and watch them and observe them and ask questions and push them and really try and figure out what's actually happening to their cognition. And their cognition is moving in 3 different dimensions: their thinking, their identity, and their meaning making. And that forms the axis of the cube, the axes of the cube. So that's what we study. And it's one thing to study individuals. That's kind of interesting, right? And what does it do to you and what does it do to you? But nothing that humanity has ever done is because of one individual. It is because of our social construct. We are social species. So a lot of our research is very much moving into what is this doing to groups and teams and cultures.
And what it's doing to teams and cultures, I'm really curious about as well, for the simple reason that when I speak to people, and let's say they're on an S curve right now, we're all in an S curve journey where we all kind of go back on ourselves to work out how we've adapted. And sometimes we reflect, sometimes we don't. A lot of people, if they're just in that early part of the S curve, where I think it was Tess Posner, is it Tess Posner, who talked about the magic. They're finding the magic in, ChatGPT converting some thoughts into a Canva document and then, pushing it out and everybody feeling very, very happy with that, which is just the tip, the tinsy wincy little tip, the snowflake on top of the iceberg of what AI can do. And they've found magic. They've got their gateway to, the world of AI, and then you have to keep, going forward. But there's that magic in it. And often, just with something as simple as that, a lot of people are unable to cope or to understand that level of magic, let alone the level of magic that the people at Artificiality Summit are used to living and breathing, every single day, and exploring and pushing boundaries. How, because there are going to be all of these different sectors of people, groups, teams, society, where I see an S curve in my mind, but where do you see it?
Well, that's a good question. So one of the things, the very first thing that popped out of our early research that we published earlier this year, and I think in June, was what we call the adaptation terrain. And so this is and so adopting AI and learning to use AI and learning to bring it into your life and work is much more of a terrain than it is any sort of linear progression. And it's very, very, it's very complex, but there are 5 very distinct zones or parts of the terrain that people can be in. And you described the first one. We call it recognition. That moment of first contact, that, oh, shit, didn't know I could do that. And this can be positive or negative valence. It can be, I didn't know I could do that. Or, wow, I didn't know I could do that. And people stay in this recognition moment for quite a long time. They're doing a lot of calibrating of trust, because trust is absolutely critical. They're trying to figure out whether they like it, whether they don't like it, whether they use it for this, whether they use it for that. It's everything from, I made this piece of AI imagery, which is like kind of cool but kind of crap, and I'm going to put it on Instagram, see what people think. There's everything like that, through to wow, I just took a photo of my irrigation system that's broken, and I put it into ChatGPT, and I now know how to fix it, and I did fix it. So there's this recognition moment where people, and it is very magical. And there's a lot going on there. Once people get through that, they move into what we call integration, where integration, you're literally integrating it, and it's come into your life. You're using it for more productive tasks. You might get into certain habits of the way that you make a prompt, the way that, like the way you compare documents, for example. I want to compare. So my first integration moments were comparing scientific documents, or extracting things that I wanted to pay more attention to out of scientific documents, getting things translated up and down a stack. So quantum mechanics, please explain this to me like I'm a high schooler. Those kinds of things. And then, but once you sort of get pretty comfortable in that, and you have to start sort of pushing yourself in different directions, what tends to happen is people move into a phase we call blurring, where you can't really tell where you end and the AI starts. You just become so fluent, right? And you can exist and coexist in that for a long time. It's very stable, but eventually, and it isn't obviously linear, but because this can happen anytime, but eventually you'll have some sort of fracture. Something will break, some coherence will break, some trust will break. A lot of times we see fractures exist because people suddenly realize, holy shit, this is better than me, and maybe I'm training the AI to replace me. In a professional context, that happens quite a lot. Another way that fracture can happen is you do something stupid. You forget to really check whether you copy and paste out of ChatGPT, or whether you've got a hallucination that you didn't pick up on. But there's something like that where you get embarrassed in the real world. That's something that we see. Obviously, everyone sees a lot of that. Or it could be because of someone else's use. Also, that you are past a hey, I got Claude to figure out our entire business strategy. What do you think? And you go, oh man, I want to talk with you, not with what you think Claude thinks matters. I want you to do the thinking. So there's a lot that happens in that complex phase. And then this final one of reconstruction, where you start to rebuild different patterns, you put up different boundaries. You say, I want to use AI for this, I don't for that. I want it to be in this role for that, and not for this. And I also take on more accountability, and I take on more of myself in this journey. I'm going to show up and be more open about the way that I use AI, or I'm going to communicate with others and know that they're supported by me and their choices, that the humans are accountable. So it's sort of this process of moving through to what really matters. And this might sound sort of complicated, but and sort of new, but actually it's not, in the sense that when we're looking at what's different about AI, it's in this world of the cube that we think is really different. But in this terrain, it's actually not that different. We see this in many other patterns of human existence. So colonialization had a little bit of this, but you could think about it more in just like when you go to an entirely new country, you have that moment of, whoa, this is so cool. And then you kind of find your way around. For me, I learn how to use public transport in a foreign city. I just feel like I'm really integrated. I can do this, and I get confidence, and I can move around the city. And then blurring, I don't even notice anymore. I'm just like swiping on the train or whatever. And then, something breaks, you make a muff on some language, or you turn up to a restaurant 2 hours too early, like what happens in Spain, whatever. And then you sort of get to this recognition and this new reconstruction of, I'm a traveler, or I'm a tourist, or I'm actually someone who wants to be part of this culture. That is a very normal human process.
I'm just thinking about that process where when you move into a different culture, and usually that's an alien environment to us. We're not used to the customs, we're not used to the language, we're not used to the time zone, we're not used to a lot of things. So I appreciated the language that you were using. But if we use the idea of it being alien to us and then there being a fracture, a lot of people, for example, if we just use the travel, they can't wait to get back into their own beds. Most
Hmm.
people, they're done with the traveling. They've had enough of that change. And then overlaying that idea onto AI, where we are with AI. Can you see that happening at all, where people are just going to go, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to time out. I'm going to rage quit. I'm going to go and do something completely different? Or do you think this is like the car, that we can't live without it?
I think we're seeing everything everywhere all at
Right.
once, literally. And there's a reason for that. Um,
Mm.
One is that it is a general purpose technology. So people are experimenting and figuring out what works for them in a general purpose way.
Mm.
I do think if we move to sort of the socio-political um, structures at the moment, there's a lot of people rejecting AI for really quite good reasons in terms of their personal ethics, their sense of responsibility to um, intellectual property, whatever. Um, do I think that's sustainable?
Mm.
No, no, I don't. I think it's. I think that the courts have ruled in favor of the AI companies in terms of supporting the way that the models learn in the same way that humans learn. So that side of things ain't going to change anytime. We have to look to the future and actually start creating better structures. Even today, something changes every day, right? Even
Mhm.
today, I see 11 labs in the same newsletter. One hand, 11 labs is now has structures for paying the estates of famous celebrities who have died to use their voice as clones. So there's a payment structure there. But in the same newsletter, we have Wikipedia writing a blog to say, AI companies, please use our paid API and stop scraping our site. Now, where this all comes down to where we all sit in this judgment of what's fair and what you can do versus what you should do. And everyone's making these decisions at a very sort of personal organization level. And it's never been more important to have your personal morality and your ethics guide, to have good judgment there. Like everyone's got a different value system. I'm not going to judge someone else's today based on this conversation. I'm just calling out that there's this process of developing your own ethical stance is actually going on all over the place right now. So that's part of what's driving that difference. I think
Mm.
that there's a narrative right now that is very dangerous. Um, it's a two-sided narrative. On one hand, we have the big AI companies saying, essentially, talking up the AGI curve. It's there for all sorts of reasons. It's there for investment reasons. It's there for competitive reasons. It's there for geopolitical reasons. Those sort of three core things. Big power structure reasons. So they're calibrating that conversation about massive change, which is fine. You see that narrative for what it is. That narrative in our current context is doing quite a lot of harm to their own agenda, because the harm it's doing to their own agenda is that it's 100% about replacing people with machines.
Mm.
And if we honestly think that people are going to lie down without a fight on this, that's someone who has no idea of history or any understanding of human nature. That just ain't going to happen. So is it a revolution coming? Who knows? But I definitely see a significant rejection and pushback that actually is not particularly productive, because AI is unbelievably helpful. It is the most incredible invention. It is the most incredible technology. I'm literally in awe and wonder of these alien minds around us. And we had a participant at the summit call out in one of the sessions, we should keep these more alien the better. And I'm like, here, excellent. It is. We're designing these things to be to replace us, when we should be designing them to sit alongside us and make us smarter. There is absolutely no purpose in technology if it takes away our agency, our cognition, our sense of identity, our ability to make meaning in our lives, and our ability to do that with other people. There is no point. And there is a propaganda narrative that is about replacing human struggle and imperfection and inefficiency with a perfectly efficient, aligned world where nothing bad ever happens and AI does everything and solves all our problems. It's a complete removal of human agency, and that is it's a long time human story, right? There's no secret that this is a long time emancipation of humanity, transcendent. It's no coincidence that some of these people are the same people that are trying to leave the planet and that are trying to leave their bodies and upload their consciousness. There's a high correlation between these ideas. The reality of the vast majority of people alive is that technology is there to make life better, to remove things that they don't want to do, that they can move on to different things that they want to do. But what they want to do is actually still about work. It's still about solving problems and solving problems together. That's what humans do well, is solve problems together. And you put AI into that mix, and it changes the social fabric because it is agentic. It has thoughts of its own. Now, there are people who strongly disagree with that proposition, but part of the artificiality is that we've gone past that discussion. We've just moved into let's actually look at the evidence for how these things really do function with us as true cognitive cultural tools.
Holy smokes. I am so looking forward. I'm going to have to invite you already to have you on the podcast again in 12 months' time to see where things have changed, how things have shifted. So let's book that in the calendar. So, I mean, I love the language that you're using. Samuel Lonkar was on my podcast. He's a philosopher, and he was on my podcast several months ago, specifically talking about the drive by I call them technocrats, other people call them other things, specifically on what they want to do with the future of technology and where that's going. And for the majority of people, that is going to be absolutely terrifying, as is the idea. You talked about the idea of unknowing, and I believe your conference for next year is going to be talking about unknowing. Am I right there, or did I just
Yes, that is our theme for next year.
Okay, so we've got this thing where we want to know. We don't like feeling the uncertainty of not knowing. We also have a sneaky suspicion that the all is not well by certain leaders in the tech world. So how do we grapple with the unknowing? And I'd love for you to go in a little bit deeper on that, and the fact that we're a little bit concerned about where things are going.
Well, you got to put that into sort of deep historical context, which no doubt your philosopher guest helped to do. So very simply, this is how we sort of think about it: that we're in a sort of third phase of what it means to be human. So pre-enlightenment, there was humans in general. Now this is very general, right? Like we're talking like massively general here, but very generally, and it's a very Western idea. This is I'm putting in a box that Eastern philosophy has had a totally different path. And I would say that if the AI was being built in the philosophy of Buddhism or something like that, it would be a very, very different story. But let's just stick with sort of our Western philosophy. Mm-hmm. That pre-enlightenment humans who we look to gods for answers. That was where certainty came from. And there's a deep scholarship in the role of different kinds of religions and different kinds of even secular practices. But we look to the gods, said that the God has the answer. And then scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, no, humans have the answer. We have the scientific method, we have rationality, we are rational beings, da 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 da. And now we're in a phase where we've invented something that has the answer. It's how a lot of people use it. Knows more than us, smarter than us, can see at higher dimensions than us, doesn't feel like us, doesn't act like us, but maybe that's only a matter of time, who knows. But we're moving into this world where there's a big question: is it being human, maintaining our own agency and our own choices and having a right to do that and having sovereignty over our own minds? Or does it mean asking the AI? And if you look at really all of the discourse in AI, whether it's highly philosophical, are they conscious, are they not? Or whether it's really economic, is this a bubble, is this not? Or whether it's really sort of granular, is it cheating, is it not? Every single one of those dichotomies come back to that question of what does it mean to be human when we've invented a technology that potentially might replace us as the only self-learning, self-replicating intelligence that we know of in the universe? That is a really big question. Our friend and philosopher Tobias Rees describes it as a philosophical rupture, and we agree with him. And we think that's one of that's why it feels so it just feels painful to consider some of these things. And right now, the most painful thing is what's it going to do to jobs? That's what people are worried about. And rightly so, because the VCs are out there with an investment thesis that says we will make our return on investment by replacing labor with capital, with machines. That is a very uncool thought. No one wants that to happen. They really don't. And that cross discussion is confusing and anxiety provoking.
100%. Okay. You mentioned sovereignty. You also talk about cognitive sovereignty. In my book, I talk about mental sovereignty for the simple reason that we need to be emotionally grounded. We need to understand all of the systems around us to be able to make the right decisions from an emotionally intelligent perspective. Tell us more about cognitive sovereignty, especially when there is so much uncertainty. Sorry to keep going back on the uncertainty. I don't want to dwell on that. We know the reality, but what is cognitive sovereignty through your lens?
So cognitive sovereignty is the ability to be the author of your own mind. And how do you do that? Well, it's through things like reflection and awareness and ethical reasoning and understanding your own reasoning. And the reason this keeps linking back to uncertainty, which I think you're totally correct to sort of focus on that. But the reason it comes back to uncertainty is because so much of our all living things have a drive to reduce uncertainty. And that is the core of, we go back to that computational discussion. It's the core of our predictive processing in our brains. It's like, okay, I've I need to go out into the world to get new information, so I'm not going to be surprised in the future. That's a way of reducing uncertainty. That's the explore, the drive for curiosity. But then there's just the general drive for sense making and the general drive for just predictive processing. We need to take an action, so we have to understand. We do something to reduce the uncertainty about what our predictive models are telling us about the world. So it's all of this prediction, feedback, action loop. And, well, I should say it that way: prediction, action, feedback loop, right? And so everything revolves around how much we're measuring that error signal, which is essentially how good was our prediction, and what is the core element of uncertainty that we need to go and reduce. So that is just the biological basis. Now, that's a very expensive process for all living creatures. That's expensive. You have to use a lot of energy to go out and check your predictions, or to explore, or to whatever. And so we have this biological drive to reduce how much energy that takes. So we want to be more efficient. Now, human cognition is incredibly efficient, right? Like a 2-watt, whatever it is, 20-watt light bulb powering this massive supercomputer that sits in my skull. What are the restraints on it? Well, we have a limited lifespan, unfortunately, but we do. We have limited attention, and we require calories. We have limited energy to do things with. And those restrictions, those constraints, drive this energy efficiency paradigm. Now, that exists for all living things. Where are humans different? Well, humans are different in that we have culture, and we have there's a great psychiatrist in the UK named M. McGilchrist who sort of sums it up nicely, that what humans have been able to do, mostly through our right brain, our right hemisphere functionality, is to transcend the sort of nature, tooth and claw, that we've transcended the actual drive from a natural selection perspective to just be efficient. And that transcendence is about meaning and culture and choosing hard things and seeing ambiguity and grappling with uncertainty, because uncertainty is where all the interesting things are. And so one example that's really, really easy to sort of get the hang of, would you bother, you think about what it's like to watch a game, like a netball game or a rugby game or something, if you know the score versus if you don't know the score.
True. The excitement, the emotional energy that comes from not knowing the score is huge. You're invested.
Yeah.
You're following every single movement.
And that is life. That is human meaning. And if we try and reduce everything to zero uncertainty and total efficiency, it's like watching a game you know the score of for the rest of your life. And no one wants to do that. So we're constantly pushing against, we've constantly got this tension between security and extension of ourselves and who we are. And what cognitive sovereignty means in the face of uncertainty is maintaining that sense of yourself and your ability to do that and your confidence in doing that, and the reflections and the growth, the personal growth that comes with that. And that's why all of these discussions about AI taking over jobs and AI taking over the building of expertise are so boneheaded, because they don't account for the fact that what humans like to do is constantly move back and forth across that frontier. I mean, that's kind of what an apprenticeship is. You're pushed into something that's a little bit uncomfortable, but you're in a safe, supported, collaborative environment by a good coach or a good teacher or a good, senior surgeon or whatever. And you practice, you do something, and you learn and you get better. And and we will always want to do that. We will not, some people will want to be Wall-E and sit and watch movies all day or whatever. But the vast majority, the human condition is balancing what we call the explore exploit trade-off, and that exists throughout our lives. It's more explore early on. That's what babies do. It's more exploit late in, middle years. But because you've got so much information, you can sort of work on it and exploit the world. But overall, what we want to do as humans is constantly, we're always making those choices about where we want to explore, where we want to be curious, and where we want to do new things. That's expensive. But AI helps us do that. And it's part of our human condition. You don't see dogs doing this. It's part of our human condition is to use the culture to do that. What are the cultural norms? What are the cultural things that send us into different places of value? Now, we value scientific discovery. We value that exploration. We value truth seeking, or we value entertainment, and we value new novel ways of perceiving the world through film or literature or whatever, social media. But we're not, that cognitive sovereignty is having the awareness about what you're doing with that. How is it changing you? Who are you becoming? And it's interesting because it takes some things that are hidden and elevates them. So, for example, the term metacognition, the ability for us to think about our own thinking. It's one thing to say, well, that makes us unique. There are neuroscientists and cognitive scientists who maintain that the only thing that makes us truly unique is our ability for metacognition. And you can see some evidence in the models of a little bit of this, but basically we're really good at thinking about our own thinking. That's a big label to put on a massive new skill. That entire field needs to be broken down into subfields and into practices and into pedagogy and into all sorts of things that we haven't even started innovating on yet, and haven't even started valuing. That understanding the state of your own knowledge has become an absolutely core skill, especially for leaders and organizations. A good leader is someone that A, helps their team grapple with uncertainty, and B, understands the state of their own knowledge and can coach other people into that. So this awareness, self-awareness, all of these things that sound sort of kind of soft and fluffy and very, meditation appy, they're critical. They're absolutely critical. So that's kind of where I get to with that. Did that make sense?
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. It's fantastic. All righty. So one of the things that I loved about your event, and I can't wait to go to next year's event, Artificiality Summit in Bend next year, 2026, was that you did something in real time. You and David created this app. We all got together, the entire group got together, and we were contributing to the app based in groups, adding our responses in a fantastic, very fast-paced format. People like me absolutely loved it. I was able to move really, really fast. I didn't have to think too much about it. It was my perfect ADHD vehicle. Other people without ADHD that were more thoughtful, really wanted to think things through, really wanted to understand the question, found that process, a little bit more challenging. There was a lack of flow, and you could see that there was the tension there, and which I thought was fantastic. What an amazing experiment right in front of all of us right there and then. And I immediately overlaid that experience to, this is what's happening in organizations too. Even that uncertainty with a 45-minute breakout group where there was no risk, there was the outcome was the experimentation. And I just thought to myself, the confidence, the trust, the ability to let go of your own language, especially when I overheard somebody say, well, I want to make sure I have my name associated with that idea. I'm like, I don't think that's the idea here. It's like smushing it all together to come up with variables. And that's when I thought to myself, even the best brains in AI right now are again at that curve, or trying to grapple with this new toy, if I can call it a toy. And it was just so powerful. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. So I'd love to ask you, when people take on board this kind of technology, because they're going to take on this kind of technology. I think this is fantastic. I've already spoken to IDEO and said, hey, I want to be able to have this for myself. How do I make this myself? How do I bring this in so I can facilitate this myself? Super powerful. And apparently it's very easy. But Jen from IDEO would say that. I look at it and I think, okay, but there's still that learning curve for people at the beginning, the onboarding at the beginning, so people can let go and be the artist versus feeling like they have to control, the interpretation of every single word in a question. What are your thoughts about everything that I've just said there?
Well, the way that I felt about that exercise,
It was an
uh,
amazing exercise. I just want to say that. I loved it.
you see, it was very polarizing, because there were a lot of people that hated it and
Yeah.
didn't, and said, well, that would have been the session that if I'd known what was coming up, I would have gone home and had a bit of a nap, whatever. It's just fascinating. So the way I think about that session now is it's as if we opened every single cage in a zoo simultaneously and said, have at it. I literally, like monkeys on top of tigers eating penguins. It would have just been, it was kind of chaotic. Now, it was chaotic for a couple of reasons. There was part of it that was a bit chaotic because some of the text was a bit small, sort of things that were about the logistics and the planning.
Mhm.
But I think that was actually a distraction from why it was truly chaotic, which was your experience. It was actually very. We had people who were like, "This is fantastic. It supports my humanity. I'm feeling like I'm being heard. I'm feeling like I can think at the right speed. I'm
Mhm.
loving this. I don't care about authorship. I just care about the result, and I want to see this feedback." And then there were people who were like, this dehumanizes me completely. I don't want a machine to be part of this. I want to see my voice, my ideas, my particular words. My particular word is the thing that matters to me. Now,
Mhm.
that spectrum of meaning and experience was incredibly
Mhm.
informative.
Mhm.
And what it said to us was, we're a very long way from using AI to truly create uh, jointly meaningful outputs.
Mhm.
And I think that I don't know what to do with that, other than it tells me to do more experiments. It tells me that there's an entire research program that we want to have as part of what we do, that actually does track how people handle AI in a social collaborative situation.
Mhm.
And that is the core of kind of what Dave and I have always been interested in with AI, is, and with the current set of tools, is it all comes down to collaboration. It doesn't matter to improve one individual mind. What
Mhm.
matters is what happens in the collective.
Mhm.
And
I
it's
agree.
very easy to lose sight of that,
Mhm. Mhm.
because these tools are fundamentally designed to be one-on-one things
Mhm.
that are about your mind and your identity. And that's good. We love to study that too. But um, human society is social, and it matters when you put it together. And so it's interesting that you're in the, it's great to hear that you really enjoyed that.
Loved it.
Um, I enjoyed watching it. Like, I was definitely the zookeeper that was standing back going, "Oh, this is fun." It's like, hang on a minute, I got to run over here and pick this penguin up, because I really don't want this one penguin to get eaten here. But it was such a, and like, I want to do that experiment around the world in different cultures. I want to,
Oh, yeah.
I want to take it to all sorts of different places everywhere around the world, and see if the same, see how different it is, because
100%.
it was a phenomenally interesting anthropological observation in a zoo, if I mix my metaphors.
Yeah. It was great. I think, so I mean, I was able to identify that there needed to be some onboarding, some front loading, a lot of front loading beforehand. So
As
people
is
knew.
always the case with workshops, right? There's the one thing when you run something first time, you always say, oh, I needed more context setting, I needed more this, I needed more that. And of course, that was absolutely the case as well for the people that weren't there, which are probably the majority of your listeners. Note to self, always spend, we all should spend more time recognizing up front that it takes a while to orient yourself to something that someone presents you.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you need to have time for that.
Yeah, it's like it's a bit like, back in the olden days when I lived in England, I would, go to the pub and there'd be a board game and you'd have everybody, not everybody, but there'd be people that would understand the board game and they'd be doing it. And you'd jump in not knowing and you'd feel like an outsider. And it's just like you just needed somebody to tell me what on earth I needed to do at a time and to just let go. And to just, have fun, just observe, blah, 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 blah. But I think because, I mean, in the majority of expert environments, people expect to be the expert. They expect to have their voice presented in a way so they're not diluted. So I'm thinking from a commercial perspective, thinking about organizations that I would love to do this with, helping them, coaching them at the beginning to understand that it is part of the collective to create something actually more significant that is beyond them based on what it is, so that it's getting there faster. And I think that would have been the, with the clarity of hindsight, it's like that's, if I was to incorporate something like that into an organization, it would have to be essential so people just don't throw their toys around.
Yeah, well, and you pick up on something about expertise in our modern world, where we think of expertise as sort of as binary, you either have it or you don't. But it's obviously it's not like that. It's a scale, and it's a spectrum, and it's a ladder. It's a ladder to build expertise. And one of the things that I think that language models are particularly good at is buttressing and scaffolding that process. And so, if I was doing that again, I think there'd be another language model on the front end doing the scaffolding, so that every individual, or a component of that language model, so that every individual has their own personal meet you where you are. Like,
Beautiful.
I don't understand this process. Please take me back to the beginning and I'll catch up in 5 minutes, instead of sitting there shut out because you're confused about just the basic instructions. It's we got to remember that all of this is like, it's like meeting an alien. It is like meeting an alien. Everyone's in a slightly different place with it. Some people are more comfortable just emotionally. Some people have really almost gone through some of the sci-fi stories in their own minds, and it's not really about that anymore. It's about something else. Some people have very good high fidelity mental models for the fact that these are high dimensional data representations that have really cool algorithms that do stuff fast. Some people still think of it as, some people quite understandably think about it as, a friend or another human, or everyone's just a little bit different.
Definitely. Okay. If you could offer one practice or mindset that helps people stay sovereign, cognitively, emotionally, ethically, as they navigate the next week or even the next 5 years of AI acceleration, what would it be?
I think that the most important thing is to start recognizing when you overuse AI, when you overuse and you over rely on it. And those depend on where you are in the cube. They have different pathologies. They come out in different ways. But it could be that you have spent too long at your computer or on your phone chatting to Claude. Could be just that. Could be time. It could be that you have a funny feeling that you don't know how to do a task anymore, or you don't know how to think in a certain way. Could be a funny feeling about that. It could be a funny feeling that you're just uncomfortable, that that wasn't your voice. That's not how you would say something.
Mm.
It could be a funny feeling that you used to think you were a creative person and now you're not sure what creativity even means. I mean, that's one of the things that sort of Tess, I'm not saying she overuses AI, and saying she expresses that sense of discomfort that comes from idea generation or creative paths. So I think that's conditioning yourself to your own personal, the feeling that comes from inside your body and inside your mind that something's a bit off here. And it's not about what the AI's done. It's about the role that you've placed it in and how you're using it. And sometimes it manifests, we're seeing it increasingly that this ends up manifesting in tension with other people before it manifests in somebody else's own mind. So they've overused AI and other people are calling them out on it. And no one wants to be seen like that, right? You know, you're just, you're not a whole person if you do that. So I think cultivating the sense in yourself that you need to change what you're doing and become more aware and understand what's going on in your own mind. And that's a little piece of, that's a feeling, you know. Yeah, it's, in this sense, it's not very different from when we used to teach decision making and help corporates understand how to make data-driven decisions better. That a lot of these feelings that you have started to veer off your own skill base, or that you are annoying people beyond the point that you should annoy them, or whatever these signals are, they come from a feeling. They come from interoception, so they come from your gut feel, and it's a sense of something's not quite right. I think I need to slow down. I think I need to think things through. I think I need to stop. And we don't value that enough because we're such an efficiency-based now, speed. And half the time we end up solving the wrong problems or working on the wrong problems. And part of it is because we don't listen to that feeling that says, something's not quite right. So we're big advocates of using your intuition on yourself, not on somebody else, but on yourself, you know.
So wise. And I think you're the first person I've ever heard talk about AI in such a multidimensional way, to be able to say, you know, follow your feelings or notice your feelings, notice your own feelings, and let that be your guide as to how you interact and use or overuse or try to avoid overusing AI for yourself. Fantastic. It has been such a pleasure having you on the show, and I am so excited to really see and watch your podcasts listen to your podcasts, I should say, over the next while, because quite frankly, the content that you provide is just mind-blowing. It opened up my eyes and my ears and my mind, and I really appreciate everything you have done with David at the Artificiality Summit and your podcast.
Well, thank you so much. And this has been just a wonderful hour.